TNA Wrestling just made a massive mistake. On the heels of their biggest pay-per-view in North America ever, garnering more than 7,600 fans in attendance live at the UBS Arena in Long Island, New York for Slammiversary, TNA had a chance to send the fans home happy. They had a chance to give the fans of New York a moment of the ages as Mike Santana descended down through the fans in the crowd as one of the biggest heroes that TNA could have ever crowned, only to have his dreams shattered by Trick Williams retaining the TNA World Championship at the end of the event. One of the biggest pieces of discourse going into it was the idea that TNA was not able to pull the trigger on Mike Santana, someone who has worked his tail off in order to become a main event player in TNA, someone who has outshined many of the other free agents that TNA has brought in, someone who has been there for the past couple of months, working hard and helping build up the future of TNA wrestling. That is what Mike Santana meant to TNA. That is what he has meant to the company. And it is why the decision to have him not win on this stage, on this night, in this city is all the more baffling, and it plays into one of the biggest tropes about TNA that it has had for nearly its entire existence, that being that TNA Wrestling gets in its own way like no other company in history. Even if you go back to WCW, it is clear that WCW was its own worst enemy, but not as consistently as TNA has been. You could make a good argument that TNA has been their worst enemy for the better part of the past 20 years. And that is an insane record. And even though TNA is still around, even though TNA has survived a lot of the turmoil and mismanagement that they have been through, they have somehow stuck around. The TNA name at one point was dragged through the mud, but in the beginning of 2024, they brought it back. It felt like we were getting a rejuvenated product. It felt like we were getting a new era of TNA. And the relationship with NXT, ironically enough, as big as it has been for the company, it might be the thing that is plaguing the company the most right now. Right now, TNA is playing the game of using WWE star power, using WWE's talent, using that WWE brand recognition at a time where WWE's recognition is at an all-time high in order to benefit themselves. And from a business standpoint, it does make sense. TNA has spoken about the idea of getting a new TV deal. They have spoken about the idea of trying to break out into the mainstream a little bit more and solidify their spot as the third biggest professional wrestling company in North America. And having the belts on the likes of JC Jane and Trick Williams helps that, because it automatically associates the TNA brand even more than it already has been with WWE. That allows TNA to go to potential streaming partners, to go to potential television partners, to go to potential business partners and say, we are associated with WWE. Here's what we can offer you. What do you say? And that helps them leverage in those meetings and potentially drives up the price for TNA to get to the point where they can actually make some money. Anthem, ever since they bought TNA, has had the goal of making it profitable. That is the goal for everyone who has ever had ownership over TNA. And it is a goal that no one has been able to achieve. And right now, they seem to be as close as they've ever been. But my biggest fear is that even though you could make that business argument that TNA needs to be able to do this partnership with WWE, and if they're going to do a TNA invasion angle of NXT, that's going to help ratings or whatever, I think that you can still say that it is a mistake not to have closed, arguably, one of the biggest shows in the history of your entire promotion with a happy ending, a satisfactory ending, an ending that was befitting the vibes of this show. Because even though you can make the argument that Trick Williams could have won and it would have made business sense, Santana winning would have been better both for the story that TNA is trying to tell, that of their resurgence, but also it would have been better because it would have been a solidifying moment for fans of TNA. All of the goodwill that TNA has built up, all of the trust that TNA has built up over the last 2 years had a chance to be immortalized in an awesome moment. And it would have been with a guy who really represents that resurging spirit of TNA. Santana, when he left AEW, was a name that people were very curious to see what he'd do. And over the past couple of months, he has done nothing but shine in TNA. He has been a rising star in the company, and not having the world championship around his waist tonight feels like a letdown, and it feels like a decision that, if it doesn't pay off, will go down as one of the most boneheaded and easily missed booking mistakes that TNA has ever made. And that is not something you hear commonly in this era of TNA. That is not something that fans chastise TNA about. TNA has arguably been one of the more consistent companies over the past year or so as far as booking goes. But man, it really does feel like this was one of those patented, iconic TNA shoots itself in its own foot moments. And even though I want to be cynical, even though I want to chastise this move, the reality is that if they are able to rehabilitate Santana from this moment, they are able to finally have that crowning achievement at Bound for Glory and it mean as much as it would have tonight, then we're all proven wrong. However, I'm not sure if I can see that happening. But hey, I guess we'll all see soon.